So I've been thinking about self-isolation a lot.
Remember that self-isolation of people with mild symptoms helps reduce the burden on our local health system.
This is practice social distancing. This is a crisis, and unless we treat it as a crisis, it unfortunately is going to get a lot worse.
The time for social distancing, it's immediate.
What exactly is social distancing?
For some reason. Surprisingly, there's a lot of self-isolation, quarantine, and social distancing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is great for me because that's the only thing I talk about on this channel. There's also some key lessons we can learn from these superhero stories. The funny thing is, I'm not where I usually record anymore, and I don't have any of my recording equipment that I used to have. I like to have my face in my videos, but this is not one of those videos, but we did need an intro, so here we go. The MCU is a successful movie franchise for a lot of reasons, but one that always fascinates me is Marvel's ability to develop fictional stories with real-world implications. While each movie is packed with impossible science, made-up abilities, and fantasy universes, they always seem to be rooted in reality. Every Marvel movie delivers a significant commentary on the human experience. Themes like relationships, societal change, justice, corruption, power structures, economic classes, international relations, military control, race equality, sacrifice, war, and so much more are omnipresent in Marvel movies. Which leads me to this video, where I somehow relate the real-world crisis we are facing right now, an international pandemic, to the fictional universe of Marvel movies. In part to keep my YouTube channel relevant after neglecting it for so long, but mostly to provide some context and maybe some comfort to those of you who are really struggling right now. Before I get too much further into this, I really don't want to downplay or trivialize the huge suffering happening in the world right now by comparing it to Marvel movies. Obviously, the devastation that this virus has and will cause in the coming months is not even a little bit comparable to some dumb Marvel movies. Please don't take it that way. I'm incredibly privileged and lucky to be sitting here healthy and safe making a YouTube video. I understand the extreme stress and anxiety that the world is facing right now because I'm feeling it and seeing it too. I just hope to provide a little bit of comfort to Marvel fans by drawing some lessons we learned from these movies about isolation. I'll leave some important links in the description so you can learn more about the virus and how you can help. That being said, let's look at some examples of isolation we see in Marvel films.
But as Wakanda thrived, the world around it descended further into chaos. To keep vibranium safe, the Wakandans vowed to hide in plain sight, keeping the truth of their power from the outside world.
Wakanda is probably the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about self-isolation in Marvel movies. In Black Panther, Wakanda is an African nation that decided to isolate itself from the world in order to protect their culture and resources from imperialism, colonization, and war, which works for a long time. Self-isolation allowed Wakanda to thrive and grow into the most advanced civilization on Earth. They also maintained a rich culture untouched by outside influences. Maybe what we learned from this is that self-isolation is an opportunity to grow and improve ourselves while we protect ourselves. If you're able to, take this time to learn something, build something, or change something about yourself. Some of us may come out of quarantine with a new skill, a side hustle started, or just some better habits. For the most part, Wakanda thrived in self-isolation, and maybe you can too. For those of you that are about to leave a comment about how Wakanda didn't stay in isolation, please watch the whole video because I'm going to touch on that in the end. Also, for those of you that are typing a comment right now about how not everyone can just thrive in isolation and become better people because of it. Some people are under extreme stress and depression, and it's all they could do just to weather the storm of isolation. You shouldn't expect everyone to become better people out of this. I know, which is why I want to talk about the Winter Soldier.
Sure about this?
I can't trust my own mind. So until they figure out how to get this stuff out of my head, I think going back under is the best thing. For everybody.
At the end of Civil War, Bucky Barnes, also known as the Winter Soldier, puts himself in isolation. Literally. Isolation. Get it? Okay, in order to protect the world and himself from the harm he has the ability to cause, Bucky takes himself out of society for a minute. Civil War is a really good movie, and I'm sure if you're watching this, you don't really need a rundown of Bucky's backstory, but in case you forgot, Bucky is unstable. He's brainwashed by Hydra to be an assassin. While Captain America does everything in his power to restore Bucky, he can't necessarily control his programming, and in the wrong hands, he can still be used as an evil assassin again. So Bucky decides that until they can figure out his programming, it is best for him to be isolated and hidden from society, which is something that all of us need to decide to do right now. We don't know if we carry this virus or not, and we may present as a threat to vulnerable people around us. So we have to make the smart decision of staying inside and isolating ourselves, just like Bucky Barnes.
How are you feeling?
Good. Thank you.
Come. Much more for you to learn.
Bucky doesn't necessarily thrive, though. We don't really see how he does in isolation in Wakanda. We know that he becomes unfrozen at some point, so we can assume that he was deprogrammed. I'm sure we will learn more about how isolation affected him in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus when it comes out. Maybe Shuri figured out how to remove the programming in his brain or whatever. Maybe he did thrive and become a better version of himself. But for now, it's safe to say that whatever happened, Bucky didn't self-isolate to thrive or grow. He isolated to protect himself and others. And that's all that we ask of him. That's all that is asked of you right now. You don't have to grow from this. You don't have to change from this. You just have to survive this, like Bucky.
How'd they find me?
We never lost you, Doctor. We've kept our distance. Even helped keep some other interested parties off your scent.
Why?
Nick Fury seems to trust you. But now we need you to come in.
What if I say no?
I'll persuade you.
And what if the other guy says no?
We can't talk about self-quarantine without talking about Bruce Banner. Bruce notoriously removes himself from society in order to protect them from the Hulk. He's so afraid of becoming the Hulk uncontrollably and hurting people. He literally and figuratively wrestles with the monster inside of him constantly. At his introduction in the Avengers, Bruce is found isolated from Western society in a vaguely offensive depiction of Calcutta, India. Here's the thing though, Bruce doesn't just physically isolate himself, he socially isolates himself too. With the exception of treating people with lepers, he limits his human interactions and connections. He's so afraid of himself and hurting others that he doesn't even talk to them, let alone develop intimate, emotional relationships with them. S.H.I.E.L.D. has to track him down and pretty much trick him into talking to them. This is something the CDC has since reformed. Where they first recommended social distancing, now they call it physical distancing, because you don't want to or have to socially distance yourself from others. You just have to physically distance yourself. You can socialize while in quarantine. In fact, it's recommended to. Bruce goes stir crazy under social isolation. When he's interacting with the Avengers, he is always anxious and awkward, even around the people he loves, because he socially distanced himself for so long. When quarantining yourself, it is easy to fall into social isolation as well, and we see this with Bruce not only after his isolation in Calcutta, but after his isolation in Sakaar as the Hulk. Turns out, removing yourself from society can take a major toll on your social life. Who knew? Remember to reach out to the people you love and the people who love you. Stay active in society at all cost. Not to overshare, I don't like talking about myself on this YouTube channel, but I'm an extrovert. Social distancing is stressing me the heck out. So I have to find ways of socializing and staying connected, or else I risk falling into a sad hole like Bruce Banner did. A lot. Check on your friends, text them, call them, video chat with them, keep social media updated on your life, join some live streams. Stay connected. Remember that this is physical distancing, not social distancing.
Hey, you try and entertain a 10-year-old when you can't leave the house. You know the lengths that I've gone to? Close-up magic. I learned that.
In Ant-Man and the Wasp, we see the result of Scott Lang's house arrest. In his case, staying at home isn't a choice. Scott is under house arrest because he is kind of a war criminal for fighting on Captain America's side during Civil War, which is kind of funny because in the first Ant-Man movie, he swore off crime altogether in order to be a good father to his daughter, but it worked out because he was able to get house arrest and spend time with his daughter, but then he got caught in the quantum realm and didn't get to see his daughter grow up, but then he got reconnected with her in Endgame, so it all worked out, but I'm getting ahead of myself. What I want to talk about is what he did with his house arrest and how that relates to the quarantine. Well, in America, a lot of the state's stay-at-home orders are simply suggestions. We are by no means under house arrest. Other countries are under more severe lockdown, with leaving your house becoming a punishable offense by fines or by force. Regardless of how you enforce it, though, we are all stuck at home, like Scott Lang at the beginning of Ant-Man and the Wasp. But he did not let that destroy his life. No, he made it fun and interesting for his daughter and himself, while still following the rules. Maybe all you need to learn from Marvel in this trying time is to build a fun cardboard maze inside your house for you and your kids to have an adventure. Maybe this is a time to get creative with what you have. Try not to fall into old, easy habits. Change things up. Make every day a new day for yourself, like Scott Lang did.
How'd you do it, Scott? Do what? The card trick.
The thing is, in pretty much every instance of self-isolation, quarantine, or social distancing in Marvel movies, the lesson is not the isolation, but the escape from it. The reunification of separated peoples is usually the outcome of any isolation story. At the end of Black Panther, we learn that isolation may have helped Wakanda thrive in the past, but the future is connecting and sharing their resources with the outside world. Bruce Banner has to join the Avengers. He even becomes a better, happier person when he experiences more human connection. Bucky also has to come out of self-isolation in order to fight in the Battle of Wakanda, and he seems happier too when he reconnects with his friends. And of course, Ant-Man breaks his house arrest in order to help Hank and Hope rescue our girl Michelle Pfeiffer. All this is to say that we know when our Marvel heroes get out of quarantine, and usually they are better off out of quarantine than in it. We don't know when we'll be out of quarantine, and we don't know if we'll be better off when we do. The answer to self-isolation in entertainment is so often just get out of it, but it's not that simple right now. We can't get out of it right now, and we don't have all the answers. We're not at the end of this movie. We're not even close. But what I can say now, at the end of this video, is that quarantine will end. Whether it's May, June, or later, the restrictions will be lifted. Restaurants, clubs, parks, and everything we took for granted in the past will be open again. This isn't the end game, and it's not productive to think that it is. Marvel usually tilts positive, and you should too. Our heroes in isolation escaped their isolation eventually, and you will too. But right now, we have to take what we can from the example they set. If you can, use this time to make yourself better, adapt, and grow. If not that, then all the world asks of you is to survive, follow the rules, practice self-care, be kind to yourself. And you can make it through too. Don't socially isolate. Stay connected to people using the amazing technology we have available to us, and try to get creative. Have fun. Don't take everything too seriously. We will get through this, just like our favorite superheroes did. Ugh, that is so cheesy. But hey, we all need a little gross positivity sometimes, especially right now. For more Marvel content, subscribe to my channel. You may have noticed I haven't posted in about a month. That was not a planned leave of absence because, you know, March and April was crazy for everyone. It was particularly awful for me, but I'm back to a regular video schedule, fingers crossed. Like and comment on this video, let me know what you're up to during quarantine, and follow me on all my social medias. My TikTok is particularly lit right now, by the way, and I hope you're staying inside. Bye!